So welcome to our first podcast for 2023. In fact, this morning I was thinking, I remember the Y2K bug and all the work that went on with that. And I can't believe that's 23 years ago. It is very scary how life moves on. But anyway, we're sitting here in the lovely home of Gareth Kent, who's our guest today. And over to you, Bill, to take us through.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, 2023, we're January's nearly finished. That's the amazing thing about it. Well, Gareth, it's great to be here with you today. And just to introduce to our listeners, Gareth is the owner of he's a certified property valuer to start with. After many years of study, 4 years at uni, I think you did 2 years of internship, and you've been in this business 20 years.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
That's right, exactly 20 years. And the name of your business is Preston, Rowe, Paterson. And I know that you hold a very high reputation in regional Victoria and the western regions of Victoria and emanating out of Geelong for the work that you do, not only in industry but through the institutions, the banks and the insurance company. So let's start, I guess, get a bit of your personal history. And Mark always starts off, where you're from. So let's get into that, Mark.
Yeah, where are you from? Where were you? Went to preschool. Where did you start?
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, and Bill and Mark. It's fantastic to get an offer like this to come on and talk about stuff. But I guess it's funny you say the Y2K bug, because it takes back memories of what you were like when you were 21, pretty naive kid at university studying something I didn't want to do, and then working your way through from there. But back then we did think the world was going to end. Look, I grew up on a farm out in Meredith, which is halfway between Ballarat and Geelong. Quite a decent sized farm. It's now about 2,500 acres. Mum and Dad ran the farm. Dad was a valuer as well, and a regional valuer, and very much a valuer to be a farmer. So ran the business from the farm and sort of valued to substantiate the farm, because back in those days they were struggling with everything. There was a drought in the 80s and things like that, so they really pushed hard. And they bought and set up a couple of real estate agencies. They set up Bannockburn Real Estate Agency back in the day, and Mum was a real estate agent, Dad was a valuer, and they ran a very large farm, which mostly us, the kids, ran based on instructions left every morning and every night. Very much grew up.
Did you do the mandatory rabbiting and the ferrets and everything else?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We grew up, it's a very traditionally old farm, and my dad and my mum sort of grew us up in a very old traditional way too. We didn't have we had a TV, but it was very, very old TV, but we certainly didn't have any computers or any of that sort of stuff back then. And my grandfather lived down the road, and he always had this saying that every boy needs to learn how to shoot and ride. And so we lived on our back of our horses. We didn't have motorbikes and stuff like that, so we lived on the back of the horses. We all learnt to shoot at the age of about 12. I think my grandfather gave me my first shotgun at the age of 14. We had tractor licences at about the age of 14 that we could go between the farms with. And we grew up literally ploughing paddocks on rotation shifts, shearing sheep, crutching sheep, picking up hay, picking up rocks. We cleared paddock by hand back then, because we didn't have the stone pickers and the rocks pickers that they have now. So we cleared a lot of the land by just putting the truck in first gear, jumping out, walking behind it and throwing rocks on the back. That was the type of farm it was. It was a very Western Districts farm, so mostly merino, a fine merino wool. And so shearing was, there's now 10,000 sheep. I can't recall how many sheep it was then. It was a smaller farm then, but shearing went for 3 or 4 weeks. That Dad always made coincide with Christmas holidays so that we could do them, help with the shearing shed.
Did you go to the little primary school there in Meredith?
I did, and I think there was 2 teachers at the time for the whole school. There was a good horse paddock next door, so on the odd occasion we would ride our horse to school, which people find amazing that you rode your horse to school, but back then it was just easier than catching the bus. We lived 5 k's out of town, and the bus would pick us up first and drive for an hour, doing a lap of the town before getting to school. So it was easier just to jump on the back of your horse, fall asleep, and she'd take you to school. Our horses were very much part of the family back then. So
that's interesting, Mark, because only I think a couple of weeks ago I posted something on social media. I was watching a TV breakfast program recently, and a reporter was interviewing in Brisbane the owner of the Australian champion dairy cow. And the reporter, to my shock, turned around and said, "Oh, is it a male or female?" So, and this is your background is what city kids miss out on.
Well, yeah, and bringing up my own kids now, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm failing in this regard big time. I look at my childhood to their childhood now, and they live on iPads and in the city block, and I worry that I'm doing the wrong thing as a father, because when we grew up, we literally had hundreds of acres to wander in any direction we liked. We made our toys from what we found. My dad has a story about he looked up one day into the horizon after a long day's work and he saw what he thought was the Roman legion walking across the paddock. And me and my brothers had made our own armour, shields and swords and everything out of iron and everything. So it was quite good. And Dad looked up and he thought, it's been a long day. I've got to go home because I can't be seeing what I'm seeing, you know. So,
what led you off the farm?
So, I guess for me, I got off early. My brothers and sisters and that, in some respects, are still out there. But I got a bad leg injury in Year 7 on a motorcycle on the way to swapping shifts on a ploughing when we were ploughing, my brother. That put me in hospital for a period of time, which then, where I had a bad leg injury, and my recovery for that was swimming. And I wasn't allowed to play football and other stuff, I had to do swimming, and that led me to play, I was pretty bored swimming, so it led me to play a game called underwater hockey, and to keep me amused. I became quite good at it and got into the Australian squad, and ended up being the Australian captain for a year or two. And that led me to being involved in the national sports program, which was a program back then to capture, 5,000 to 10,000 kids, anybody who showed any talent at all of swimming, and to put them into this program where they went for a few weeks to Canberra and got to meet some of the trainers and put through small programs. And I mean, I didn't go much further than that with that program because they sort of wheedled out people very quickly. But that was the same group of people that ended up with Michael Klim, and all the guys that brought home those Olympic golds came from that national sports program. So it was sport that took me away, and I spent every holidays and weekends travelling to different locations to play sport, to swim, or play underwater hockey. And I guess that gave me a very early independence than other kids got. I went to Geelong College for schooling in secondary school, and that led to spending a lot of time in Geelong. And because of that, also travelling, still playing underwater hockey, I spent a lot of time at my friends' places rather than at home, and bunking on people's pads and things like that, and couches everywhere I could. And so by the time I finished Year 12, I was pretty well already left, if you like. Packed the bag and moved to Melbourne. So I got into... I went to a 6-week thing with the RAF to do... I thought I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and we did. I got into the top 12. There was only 6 places. So we went to the RAF for 3 or 4 weeks, and they wheedled it down to 6, and I wasn't one of the 6. So they
have you carried on any lessons from that program you went on? The Air Force?
The Air Force one, yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things was sitting up there looking at the maps, the weather maps, because it's all about weather, and seeing the clouds always forming over where I grew up in Meredith, and sort of thought, well, that was about right. It always was raining there. But I think I was only there for a few weeks. Yeah. But they sat you down and they said, well, you're not going to make the final cut, but we'd like you to go to ADFA or one of these other things. And I had an offer from Monash University to do engineering at Monash University. Not that I knew that was what I wanted to do, but that was a clear career path. And so I went to pack my bag and got on a train and went to Melbourne, and moved into a share house in Melbourne. Pretty well was on my own from then on through in Melbourne.
So how did you survive financially? Did you work part-time? What was your first, engagement in employment?
So my dad was very much of the idea that once he's finished schooling, that's it, you're on your own. So we got to, so basically when I was finished school, I had to pay for myself from then on in. My first job was, I looked in the paper and I found a job in a pub, which I thought was a pub, and I showed up to work and it turns out it was a strip club. And for a young 18-year-old kid that had never even kissed a girl, that was a very eye-opening experience. So my first job was working for about 8 months at Goldfingers in Lonsdale Street, in which I was a bussy and bar person and all that sort of stuff for a period of time there. And that worked well with university because I could go to uni during the day and work at the strip club at night time.
By the way, I looked up your LinkedIn profile last night and I didn't see Goldfingers on your experience.
No, I sort of leave that out.
That's fascinating.
But after that, there was a guy from one of my housemates had a job at Foot Locker, and the manager of Foot Locker found out where I was working and felt sorry for me and employed me at Foot Locker, and I stayed at Foot Locker for many years. I ended up being a store manager there and ran a couple of stores. Between me and another guy, we did the first $1 million 24-hour trade at Chadstone Shopping Centre. So I worked on that shift, and that was a big deal for Foot Locker. The first time any of their stores, nearly any store in any business had written $1 million in shoe sales in 24 hours of shopping.
That would have been a busy day.
It was an amazing experience. I think there was a few of us that didn't sleep for about 3 days to make that happen. But I guess in terms of my business skills and talking to people and creating rapport and being able to think through all those sort of things business related, Foot Locker had a big impact on me and how to made me grow up pretty quick.
Good. So from there, what was the catalyst that started Preston, Rowe, Paterson? Yeah, well, and your involvement.
Well, so it's a bit of a journey.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Did you finish the engineering degree?
No. Well, I got through 3 years of it.
And didn't like it?
And didn't like it. I switched in. At the time, I left Foot Locker and I was working for a computer company that pulled out of Australia not long after, but I was a BDM for them. I was doing quite well in sales, and they offered to put me through marketing at VUT. So I went to marketing, and I did that in like 12 months and duxed it. But so they offered to pay the course, and I wasn't really doing much at engineering. I was the grand poobah of the uni. I was president of the water ski club, which didn't have a boat. I was the we created a club called the
You've got
Guinness.
the Maribyrnong River there.
Yeah, no, we were in Monash at Caulfield. There's no rivers there, and we also we created a club called the Guinness Appreciation Society, and I was the president of that for a while. And that was so back in the days of before voluntary unionism, the kids had to part of your school, your fees went to clubs. And to create the clubs, you just had to sign on as many kids as you liked. So what we did is we always set up a keg on O Week and gave out free beer if they signed up. And so we'd get 300 kids sign up for our club, and it didn't matter what you called the club, they always signed up. The water ski club had a boat or two that the Monash paid for, but sat in a shed somewhere up near Deniliquin, and I never stepped foot on it. And I was the president for a year or two.
Yeah, but it's interesting you say you started one course and then you ended up into something. In fact, our last podcast last week with Nick, who you know, who is an accountant, he started off in architecture. School.
Yeah,
and then that's what his heart wanted him to do. And in fact, it's interesting. I think he indicated he'd love to go back to it.
Well, I had an experience that I'll share with you that I think was really relevant for other people who might be listening to this, is that so I'd done all these things and done all these different jobs and done all these different things and learnt different things out of them. And I had a really good football coach, and football was the main constant in my life. The first day I moved to Melbourne, I didn't know anybody. I went to the uni and asked who the football coach was and introduced myself and started playing football, and they were the main constant through everything. And my coach, Gary Ryan, who now runs a company called Organisations That Matter, he pulled me aside and he said, "Right, son, you're all over the place. You need to straighten up." First of all, he put me through a couple of leadership programs, which helped, but then he made me sat down with me and made me write down all the jobs I'd had in the first column, and then break that down into all the aspects of those jobs that I liked and all the aspects of the jobs that I didn't like. And then he took that further and goes, well, cast your brain further. What do you want to do in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 20 years? Create that picture and work backwards from that. And that includes how you expect to get paid. Do you expect to get paid by the hour? Do you expect to get paid for the job you do? Do you expect to get paid for your opinion? And to me, if you want to so your goal has to match up how you want to be remunerated in your life, because that's the reality of it. So if you want to have the big house on the hill, you can't expect to get paid by the hour because there's only so many hours in a day. If your goal is to teach children and to create a legacy of education or something behind you, then by the hour is very good, because you don't have to worry about all those stresses that come with not being paid by the hour and the risks that are associated with that. If you want a low risk life, then working for an employer is the way to go. But if you're happy with risk and you can handle risk and stress, then maybe you should be looking at self-employment. Now those questions and answering those questions lead you down a path of what your career, what you could look like and what you could do. So if you can match all the things you like with the aspects of things that lead you to where you want to be in 10, 20 years, then you're going to find once you've a career that you actually love and enjoy.
All right, well, in your life, you are now 20 years down the track.
Yeah.
So tell us about your business.
It's funny you say that, because 20 years down the track, and I'm exactly where I planned I'd be back in the day with Gary Ryan, almost to a T, except for one recent element of that, which I won't go into. But so that led me to Preston being a valuer, and I looked at that thing and decided I want to be a valuer. And I went back to uni and did valuation, did it as a postgraduate, and then I went out and knocked on a few doors and got a cadetship, and got paid bugger all as a cadetship. You got paid $20,000 a year, and you had to supply your own car, so it was almost a null reward for working. And worked under some great people. I worked in a company called PBB Valuations originally, which was run by Pierre Bernardi, and they had Tom Pound and another guy, another valuer guy, whose name's not ringing bells are on at this moment. But they had part of their business was buying and selling shopping centres and things like that. So they had a really interesting business, and they were well renowned. So it was interesting to be in a small niche business like that to do a cadetship. And then I went to a Jewish firm, First Valuation Group, which was in East Caulfield, and they basically just serviced Jewish clients. And I was, and that was also an eye-opening experience, because they got access to do more diversified type of work than you do in any of the major firms. So when you do for one of those clients, they've got property in residential, commercial, industrial, agriculture, everything. So you get to experience a wide breadth of experience. And then I went to Herenthold White, which is a major firm, and worked with them for a short period of time before realising that I wanted to set up my own business down in Geelong. And I went to a barbecue with my dad, and I went around that barbecue and I said, well, who's doing the work in Geelong? And they were all retiring. There was 7 or 8 of them standing around. Oh, we're all retiring. And I said, well, who's doing the work? And they said, well, there's one firm, Opt-in. They do the work in Geelong, and there's no one else. And my days in marketing, I realised that there always has to be two. There's always a market leader and there's a market follower. And there's only a period of time where the market leader oversaturates the market, and that creates an opportunity for a second person. And I could see that was exactly where Geelong was sitting in my field. So I set up fairly quickly in Geelong and started targeting that aspect of trying to be the alternative valuer for a long time.
So you've developed Preston Rowe Paterson into a successful business.
Yep.
You've got a number of employees.
Yeah, we're up to about 40-odd employees.
So what's your leadership style?
I think I'm a family man. When I say leadership style, I'm a family man.
I'll rephrase that. If Mark and I went and interviewed your staff confidentially and said, what's Gareth's leadership style, what do you think the response would be?
I hope and I think that their response, and I get told that this is what they think as well, that I'm an empathetic leader, in that I don't just employ people to be working for me for 6 months, 12 months, or for a small period of time. I try and get people to work with me forever. I want all of my staff to become like one big family, and that's why I say when I'm a family man, because I think that in a professional environment like us, it's highly stressful. We all need to pull together, and some need to do work that doesn't pay and others as high as others and things like that to make the whole thing work. So I'm empathetic to their needs. I'm caring about their family situations as much as their work situations. But at the same time, leading by example and making sure I also write the fees that I ask them to write, and keep the morals and ethics of the business at the same level that I expect them to.
What would you describe the culture then in your organisation?
I think we're a young culture. We started out young. They're all starting to get in mid-30s and early 40s now. We started out young together. The culture's vibrant, and very much a warm place to be, which is why I keep employees. I can count on one hand the amount of employees we've lost over the years.
Okay.
So 90% of the people that come work for me have stayed working with me right through their careers, and it's great when you go to weddings and the two people getting married both met at your work. They were both kids when they met. They've grown together, they've now married together, and now they're having babies together. So if you go to those weddings and you cry because you feel like the grandfather of these people.
And where did the name Preston, Rowe, Paterson come from?
It's a franchise name. So there's 30-odd PRP franchises around the country in New Zealand. When I joined, it was a fairly small franchise, and that's why I joined, because I identified early that it was a franchise that I could grow with.
Yep.
And grow my business within, and not have to be dictated to about how I grew my business, because they weren't at that professional high end, or they were professional, but they weren't fully developed as a franchise at that point. So it was early days. I got on board with them, and I did have the option of joining 4 or 5 other franchise. But in my industry, you need to be part of a national group, and if you're not, you don't get on the bank panels. You can't get insurance unless you're part of a national group. The smaller operators are more and more getting pushed out because they can't get the professional indemnity and they can't get access to the bank panels. Yeah. It's about quality, it's about confidence.
And you've got a little side business you've been developing. You want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, we built a program called Agrivel, and what we found just working with the banks is that they have so many processes that they need to do that they can't do, and they're such big behemoths, they're big ships moving through water, and they can't necessarily move those ships very fast to react to things that happen in the marketplace. Over a period of time within the agriculture area, especially in farm valuations, would take on average 2 to 3 months to get done. They'll cost between $5 and $15,000 to get done. And if you're a farmer who needs to borrow $20,000 and sits on a $5 million farm and needs to borrow $20,000 for some dip, you shouldn't have to pay $5,000 and wait 3 months to get a response from a bank. It just means that you can't farm the way you need to farm. So we identified that, and we went to the bank and said, well, we've got a solution, a software IT solution, which allows, rather than being an algorithm that sort of uses mathematics to come up with valuations, which don't work, what we do is our system gathers information from all over the place, puts it together, and identifies and locates the nearest valuer by longitude and latitude, and then sends the information to him. But part of that process is also a long discussion with the farmer and involving the farmer in providing that information. And that's really the critical piece, because no one does that. And so we're gathering huge amounts of data on farms all over Australia, and putting that all together with CSI road data, land data, all that sort of stuff, title information, and putting that in front of valuers. And for a valuer, that's 90% of what they do, is gathering the information before they make an assessment. So by able to gather the information for them and put it together, they can make their assessment within 24 hours and get it back to them. So the farmers are getting a quicker return and an answer when they need some funding. We're also gathering information that was never gathered before and being able to start doing some data science around that. And it's a national platform that's been adopted now by Westpac and CBA. We've had discussions with ANZ and NAB as well. We've worked with Suncorp, Rowe Bank. We've worked with quite a lot of the number of judo now as well.
So that takes you back to your farming roots then?
It does, yeah, very much so. Because we've got a large agricultural part of our business. So in building PRP franchise, one of the differences is it's not one of the big franchises, so it didn't get access to the big panel appointments for residential volume, high volume work. So what we did is we had to diversify. It forced us to diversify our business into commercial and ag, municipal. We have 7 municipal contracts, so we do the rating for half of Victoria almost. So it's diversified the business into many different sub-businesses within it, which then allows us to see things a bit differently and to see and to react to these things quickly. And being that ag team, it's interesting. We get access to a lot of stuff.
Okay, let's just change the subject for a minute, because you have another side gig, or a couple of side gigs, one of which is in the community area. We'll come to that. But you've got a monthly video called Prop by the Bar.
Yeah.
With a colleague of yours who's in the real estate industry. Just a quick snapshot on how that came about.
Me and Michael tend to like sitting around talking what we described as rubbish on a Friday afternoon, a way of us We're of similar age. We both started our businesses at a similar time. We've grown together in
And
the
Michael
industry.
is?
Michael DeStefano he's the director of Gartland's Real Estate and owner. And Michael and I are very good mates. He's a very switched on, charismatic guy, and we sit there and we just talk sometimes, and sometimes not even over a glass of wine, sometimes just a cup of tea. We just sit in each other's offices and talk. And one day someone was overhearing us at cellar door, and they said, you guys should just put a camera in front of you, because we turn around and there's 5 or 6 people we don't even know listening on the conversation. And they're going, and then they started asking questions, and it built into like a little forum of discussion forum, and it took over half a cellar door one day. So someone said you should stick a camera in front of you too, so we did, and that went all right, and we had a lot of fun with it. And then we started bringing in some guests and things like that. Mark's been on the show.
I really enjoy. I actually look forward to the next. I like the Christmas one. I like the side comments as Michael followed you around in your boardy shorts and your Christmas suit. But it's good. It's good information, and Geelong lacks good business information. There's no business news as such. So you guys are right there, property focused, but well done.
What we found is that you got to match the information, the quality of the information, and with a bit of realism and be people, have a bit of fun with it. Dress up as Santa Claus with board shorts or with the footy shorts, have a bit of fun, be real, but that makes it seem, my personal opinion is that gives the content validity, because people can say we're real people.
No,
So
it's
just
very
on
good.
top of that too, I noticed that you're now writing as a monthly column in the Geelong Times.
Fortnightly. We write in the
On
Times,
property, and I've read a couple of your articles, and that's an extension of, I guess, your reputation. And and we know through, just prop by the bar, you can certainly learn a bit about what's going on in property. Watching that.
So Warwick Brown runs the Times, and he's doing a great job. And I started reading it because I started getting a lot more information out of the Times than I could find in any other papers. That's really diving into local stories and things like that. It was very much a local paper, and the ownership of it is local as well. Warwick's the editor is actually the owner. So it means that they're a bit like my business, the local owner knows what's going on locally. So Warwick came and saw me and said, listen, he wants to get more content in the real estate. He wanted to focus on real estate, but he wanted to give people another reason to pick up the paper and look at the real estate sections rather than just seeing glossy photos and information from agents all the time. And so I put together a couple of articles that went all right and shared them on LinkedIn, and we got some good following. So now I do it fortnightly.
That's interesting, isn't it, Mark? Because there is another paper in Geelong that nobody reads, shall remain nameless. And I know I used to write articles for them, and in the end, they made the business editor redundant. And when I asked why, the editor said, well, nobody wants to know about business. They're not interested.
That nameless paper that shows Rename Nameless infuriates the crap out of me, because they do have quite a lot of exposure locally, and they could really be something special, but it seems to be a stepping stone for their journalists to go somewhere else, and none of them seem to be local. They must camp outside the courts and the football ground, and that's about it.
All right, sorry, Mark.
I was going to say the other thing that Gareth's getting a reputation for is your not-for-profit work with Lazarus House. So tell us, how did you get into Lazarus House, and
what is Lazarus House?
And what is Lazarus House, and what do you need from the community?
Well, first of all, how do I get into it is the first question. I blame Pat Manane. I guess once you get into Geelong, and I think this really ties into business, because I think if you want to do business in Geelong, we're a village, we're not a town. People got call it the town or a city. It's not. We're a village. And if you want to be part of the village, you need to contribute to the village. And at some point, when you're doing successful enough, you'll get someone like Pat Manane, who is a senior elder, like you two are, who will come to... small stab there.
Well, I just raised my eyebrows.
Who will come to you, tap you on the shoulder and say, listen, young man, well done, but how about you start contributing? And he said, I've got a problem with this Lazarus Community House. It needs someone on the board who's got some business acumen. I need you on that board. And so I said, all right, no problem, yes, sir. So I went and sat on the first board meeting, and they went for about an hour and a half talking about all the things they were doing and all the money they were spending. And then right at the end of it, I asked, what's in the bank account? They said $36, which I thought was scary as hell. And they had really great intention, doing something that's just no one's doing, that they're doing such a great job, really over-servicing for what they are. What Lazarus House does, it's a homeless drop-in centre, and it's the only one of its kind where you can go there. It's a safe place. So the first thing about it is safety. So when you go in there, the clients are vetted that they are a safe person to be able to be in that place, and that they come in, they are able to get lunch. We're serving at 55 lunches a day, 7 days a week, and so they get a hot meal. They can have showers. They can get some fresh clothes. They can get access to some referral services to help them with some of their needs. They poke around in the garden, and what happens is our volunteers, we have 55 volunteers that work there. So usually there's at least 4 on a day, and the volunteers will come out and talk to them, sit to them, and sort of it's a chill place. It's a place where they can go and chill. They don't have to be there by any sort of medical reason to be there. They can turn up at their own will or not come at their own will, and because it's not mandatory for them, they actually come in more numbers and stay longer, and we get access to talk to them, chat to them, and find out what it is. And very often or not, we're able to divulge the reasons why they're in that situation and be able to give them a referral to a service that can help them. So we work close with Bowen Health mental areas, as well as Samaritan House for some emergency accommodation, along with St Vincent's and the Salvation Army. We have 2 employed social service workers there that have very deep connections with all those sort of things, and they're able to redirect people where they need. One of the stories, for example, is a lady that came in who was in her late 60s. She was Yugoslavian. She didn't speak a word of English, and she had a little girl with her about 8 years of age. So she came in, and they came in just to get some lunch, and they were dressed fine and very clean, no issues, didn't look like homeless people. So one of our volunteers happened to speak Yugoslavian, went and back down with her and started talking to her. And what we were able to find out was that she'd been recently made the carer of this her 8-year-old granddaughter, whose both parents had been put in jail for drug offences. She was living on a single pension. Her husband had died years earlier, and he spoke most English. She'd been in Australia for good on 50 years, but never spoke English very well. Lived in that community, and as a result, she didn't know what other services she could get access to. And the 2 of them were sharing a meal a day. Like, they had one meal between them a day to get by, and the little girl had nothing for school, clothes and stuff like that. They just didn't have the money. Trying to pay rent and live on very low amounts of money from one single pension was just impossible. Within a very short period of time, the same day, we were able to get them access to Geelong Food Relief, who got them some food straight to them. And they now get regular food deliveries and regular, the Food Relief went straight to their kitchen and filled up their fridge, They get that regularly now. They got access to, they got driven down to Centrelink and introduced to someone at Centrelink who helped her, and the girl, our volunteer who spoke Yugoslavian, stayed with her the whole time, and was able to translate and organise her to get the right pensions and get the right money from the government for the right service that she should have been getting, and so we were able to fix the problem, and it was only because these people, she was able to come somewhere safe, sit down, have lunch, and while she's having lunch and there's some volunteers playing with her granddaughter, she's able to open up and tell us what the problem was, and then we're able to fix it,
Sure. So what support do you look for, Gareth? I know you're running a bit of a program for businesses to donate $100 a month. I think is what you're looking for.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to ask other businesses to get involved, just like I have. So getting involved in community is really easy, but what we need is funding. We don't get any funding from the government for this service, and it's cost us about $3,500 a week to run. So what we need is money, to be honest, and getting access to that funding from the government is just impossible. So we're asking businesses to contribute $100 a month. $100. Yeah, $100 a month is all we're asking for, and on a continual basis, not just a one-off. So we're saying, give us $100 a month, ongoing, and with that money, we can keep the doors open. We need about $270,000 a year to keep the place open. We're getting about $120,000 in grants. We need to substantiate the rest. And so we're out there asking businesses to contribute. And if you want to contribute, you can go to the lazarushouse.com.au page, and you can donate now.
Fantastic.
Donate to, and in that online system, you can put in your credit card details or your bank account, and it will automatically debit it $100 a month, and you'll automatically get an invoice every month for the debit. That's fully tax deductible.
And Gareth's very passionate about it, as you can tell. And I was invited along to the launch of the 100 for 100 a few weeks, months ago
Yeah,
now. Time flies. And there was a lot of interest. And so, if you're listening and you want to get involved in something that is very, very important, please do. So the Lazarus House website is the place to go. Bill?
Well, I think that just about brings us to the end of it. We could talk for a few hours. We can talk about you and your football injuries, for instance, and like Masters football and all your other interests. But well done, Gareth.
Thank you, Bill.
You're doing a fantastic job, and it's been great to come here today.
It's fantastic.
Do the interview, and I look forward, Mark, for when we put it up on the post it online.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you both.